Please be seated. Welcome home to St. Anne's. We're going to be real patient because we're patient people, right? We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m.
It's either patient or catch me.
Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. Well, let's talk, because we're still in Easter. Remember, Easter is a what? It's a season, right? It's not a day. It's like Christmas. I know we in the secular world like to think it's a day. The stupid little bunny comes, rains fertility on all of us. Please, God, not me. Look, we've been there, we've done that. And then the bunny disappears, and we're like, woo, Easter is over, now it's time for school to get out. Not quite. Not quite either. We still got a month, kids. We're going to get there, though. We got map testing. We're going to get there. We'll be done. But no, Easter's the season. So our readings are continuing in that theme of Easter, right? That Jesus is risen. And I told you a little bit last week that I wanted you to pay attention. Because every time Jesus appears to them, it's going to be really, really important that they notice that Jesus is fully human, right? So Jesus will always do something that makes clear to them that Jesus is real. I mean, not like the bunny real, but like real. Yeah. Anyway, so you'll notice that in this situation, they don't recognize Jesus until Jesus breaks bread with them and eats with them. And that's important because ghosts can't eat. I know, it's weird, but it's a cultural thing, it's a historical thing. It's important to them that they see that Jesus actually eats. Otherwise, they do not realize that Jesus is indeed Jesus. But I think more importantly in this story is the importance of telling stories. Can I tell you something? The Bible is not literal factual truth. It is the stories that people share, and that is where truth lies. Truth lies in us telling our stories. And I'm going to tell you something. So when I was getting my degree in counseling, there was a class, and we had to practice. God, you don't want to be the people that we practice on. Ew. That's awful. But anyway, one of the rules is that you can't ask any questions. And you can't, tell people anything. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with someone in which you do not ask yes or no questions? You may not ask questions, and you may not tell them anything. It's really good practice, and I recommend you try it. Have a conversation with somebody where you simply listen. The only thing that you're allowed to do is reflect back what you hear from them and encourage them to open up more. No yes or no questions. No advice giving. Just listen. Because here's the thing. You and I are terrible at listening. For a couple of reasons. One, we think we're brilliant and we have something that we just need to impart on other people. Have you ever talked to clergy people? We're annoying. We're really annoying. Not only are we full of advice that you didn't want, need, or is in any way useful to you, but then we cloak it in, but God said. So you can't even disagree with it. You can't argue because we put Jesus at the end. And you're like, well, now what? But what's important here is the power of the stories that these folks are sharing with each other. Because God appears in our stories and in our sharing. So can I go over this story real fast, how this goes? So Jesus was just crucified, right? So I know we've had a couple of weeks since Easter, but they hadn't yet. So this is only day 3, right? And we've talked about how kind of gutted they are about what had happened, right? We've talked about that they're just like, whoa, did not see that coming. I mean, should they have seen it coming? Probably, because he's been telling them for a while, but they didn't, because they were really focused on the whole water into wine thing because that's a lot more fun. I mean, seriously, if you got a friend who can do water into wine, you don't need to worry about anything that they say. Just hang out with that person. And they have been for a couple of years. Okay, so they're really gutted by this whole event. And so they're walking together, and they're processing through it. They're talking about it because they don't know what to do with what has happened. And I'm going to tell you that talking is the most important thing that you can do to process through something. Because talking takes all these words and things that are chasing themselves in your head, and you know you've done it, right? You're freaking out. It's 2 a.m, you wake up and you're like, oh my God. Or like it's 15 minutes before you're supposed to wake up anyway. Yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst. Or you're trying to go to sleep. But when you're busy all day long, your brain doesn't have time to process through stuff. So it waits until like there's stillness, and then all of a sudden, all these different things are chasing themselves in your head. Right? I mean, you've gone from like, oh my God, I need to do this, to remember in 3rd grade when I had the argument with Saint whoever, nun, sister, like whomever, and because I got in trouble for not bringing my library book back when I was like in 3rd grade, and I still remember it. Okay, I do. And so you are like, here's what I should have said. Oh my gosh, why didn't, and you're like reliving arguments from 30 years ago. Don't act like you haven't done it. You've done it. Anyone here not do this? Like where you're, I mean, if you don't do this, don't raise your hand because the rest of us are going to find you later. We're going to remember. But your brain does this. It just has all these things in its head. And the best way for you to get all that stuff out of your head and into making sense is to talk about it. The best thing to do to help someone go through that is to not tell them what to do. Okay? Nobody needs your advice. Nobody needs my advice. Nobody needs advice. We just don't. And if we did, we would ask for it. Okay? Or we would go to our financial planner and say, like high security stocks, dividends, what do you think? Like we would not be asking you. Okay? But talking is how we do that. And in our world, we really, really struggle with that, don't we? We struggle with how to talk about things because we think our private stories don't matter. And we should keep them to ourselves because we've been told that in society, right? Just keep it to yourself, shut up. Nobody wants to hear it. We don't want to be made uncomfortable by your stories. Or we do the opposite when we're supposed to be listening and we tell people things. We talk at them. Don't nobody need you talking at them, okay? Don't nobody need me talking at them. Not helpful. So these disciples are walking, and as they walk, they talk. And as they talk, who shows up? Jesus shows up. I'm going to tell you, as you talk and walk with your siblings in Christ, Jesus shows up. And suddenly, all that stuff was chasing yourself in its head, being like, I don't really truly believe these things. This is all crazy. I don't know what to do. I'm a mess. Suddenly, it makes sense. And all that stuff chasing yourself in its head, suddenly, oh, okay, I can do this. I can handle these things. I got this. Tell your stories. Tell them. It is the greatest gift that you have to offer other humans. Tell them your stories, your painful stories. Have you had a miscarriage? Tell people. Have you had a traumatic loss? Talk about it. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your fears? Talk about them. Because when you talk about them, Jesus shows up for other people too. Share. Share your stories. And guess what? Listen. Listen to other people's stories. Because when you listen, Jesus shows up. Jesus doesn't need you to offer people advice. Jesus doesn't need you to tell people what to do. Jesus got this. But when you are present with other people, you are Christ. And that's the whole point of all of this that we're going to be going through. As we go through Easter season and then Pentecost, we're figuring out how to be Christ in the world when Jesus isn't in it. Have I ever explained Jesus versus Christ to you? Do I need to? Do I need to do it real fast? Okay, like we got this. We got Jesus is Christ in a specific time and place, right? Jesus is the Christ in a specific time and place. But Christ, the Christ, is eternal. And when Jesus leaves this earth, we got to figure out how to be Christ, because that's what it all is. And all these stories, the Acts of the Apostles, all these stories that we're going to be reading, is these people trying to figure out how to do it. And you and I struggle with how to do that. We don't know all the time. And guess what? We don't need to know all the time. But I will tell you this. Share your stories. Share them. Because when you share them and when you listen, you are Christ. Also, don't give nobody no advice. Nobody wants your advice. We can't wait to meet you. I don't know why we do that. Stop it. Like you all know. Like, why do we even do that? We give people advice about things that we know literally nothing about. Like, I'm going to tell you how to, drive stick. I don't know how to drive stick.